Hi, welcome to Caring Community. I'm Jay West. Good to have you here, and my special guest, Matt Prose.
Good to be here, Jay.
I remember when you first came to town. You were at a meeting at King of Kings, I think, and I think Don White was sitting next to you. And I reached out I texted Don from my table. I said, "Who's that guy?" So anyway, good to have you here in Omaha. I don't know. Yeah, how many years have you been here now?
4.
And you came here from St. Louis,
Missouri,
to plant a church.
That's correct.
So why don't you tell us some of that initial story? Would you mind sharing that?
Yeah, absolutely.
'Cause I think there was a football thing in there somewhere too, wasn't there?
There was a football thing in
Yeah,
there. I'll tell that part of the story.
Okay.
So my background is been involved in ministry pretty much my whole adult life. Grew up in a Christian home, and I was working on staff at a church in St. Louis for 14 years. It was the church that I grew up in. Loved it. It was home. 2010, I was leading our young adults ministry. We had an internship program, a lot of things going on there we were involved in, and God began to do kind of a stirring in my heart for the future. And at that point, it was really the first time that I really felt like maybe God was calling me to one day be a pastor. And I knew at that time I was only 28 years old. I wasn't ready in a lot of ways. Young.
And you're 29 now, right?
29 now,
Okay, good. Okay,
pushing
got that
41,
straight.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I knew God was doing something. And I was in a conversation with my pastor's son, and he was just small talking with me about how they always do a father-son trip every year, and they were going to ride their motorcycles up to the Badlands in South Dakota. And between St. Louis and there, the middle point is Omaha. So he's just talking about how awesome of a city Omaha is, and he just kind of looks at me and he says, "You know, Omaha needs some pastors. You know, I just don't know why, but God just shared that with me, that Omaha needs some pastors. And not that there aren't great pastors here,
Right.
you know, but he's being prompted to what he said. And I just went home and looked it up online and kind of do what I always do. I'm kind of a useless information junkie, so I'm on Wikipedia all the time and things like that. And I'm looking up the demographics of Omaha. I'm like, okay, cool. Got it out of my system. I'm good. Well, I woke up the next day thinking about Omaha. And it kept this way for several days, and I would think about it, go home, do more research, and finally I'm like, I gotta tell my wife Christy about this. And so I shared with her, I said, what do you think we should do? She says, maybe we should just go up there. So we took our young kids, who were 5 and 2 at the time, we drove up here, didn't know a soul, didn't know anybody, and just Googled churches in Omaha, sat down with a couple of associate pastors just to get information about the churches and really the spiritual lay of the land here, and went back home. That was it, out of my system.
Right.
I'm good, except it wasn't. And we knew at that time, though, it wasn't the right time. So I just said to God, I said, you do whatever you need to do in us for whenever this season is supposed to happen. And so a few years went by, and not a whole lot on that, just continue to serve at our local church. Well, 2015, 2016, I started to feel like God began to almost haunt us with Omaha. Right. Like all of a sudden, everywhere we went, Omaha was coming up. I remember my wife telling me stories about buses in the weirdest places going to Omaha. We were at the airport picking up some guests for the church, and there was a sign. It was one of those like "You are here" kind of like airline signs, and it said "From St. Louis to Omaha." And as the guest is standing next to that sign that we just picked up, didn't even see the sign. He just looks at me and says, "I don't know why, but I feel like we're hanging out with friends of ours from Omaha." Like, what is going on here? Like, it's everywhere. Right. And the football reference you joke about was, you know, those years leading up, Peyton Manning snapping the football, shouting, Omaha, Omaha, right. You know, and it just felt like it was everywhere, right. You know, and I got to a point, it was November of 2016, and my wife was at a ladies' retreat. The kids are running around our house. It's cold outside. I remember we had a fire going on in the backyard, a backyard that was kind of dying down, and I'm sitting in my prayer chair, and I'm reading this book called Driven by Eternity from John Bevere.
Right.
Great book, incredible book. And I just felt God say to me that it was time. So that beginning of 2017, we told our pastors in Missouri this calling that we had. It's
funny, I'm going to interrupt, because when we came to Omaha, I was sitting in my yard reading my Bible, and it was August 11th, it was our anniversary of 1999, and God said, it's time to go to Omaha. Literally sitting in my yard, you got the same thing, you're sitting in your yard, so go ahead. So,
unbelievable, how God did it. And so I texted my wife, and I said, it's time, and she came back and said, I know. she had gotten the same thing when she was at the ladies' meeting. So 2017, we tell our pastors, we took that whole year to make a transition out of our positions. At that time, we were children's pastors at that same church. And so December 31st, 2017, we said goodbye to that season. And by the end of January 2018, we had made the relocation here in Omaha with the intention of taking a year to, get established as a family, meet people, connect with people, and begin the process of building a team to help us launch the church with and then to raise resources.
I want to circle back for a second before I lose it. So I think I heard you say you were doing young adult ministry, and then from there you went to children's ministry? That's an odd transition.
Let me tell you this, Jay. So my ministry degree is in youth ministry.
Okay.
And I have been a young adults pastor, I've been a children's pastor, I've never been a youth pastor.
Right.
It's almost like God bookended the things that I thought, I was supposed to do. Not that I feel like I missed God on that, but I just think it's interesting that when we're so set on doing one area of ministry, God's like, no, I got something different for you, something that fits you a little bit better. But the reason we made that transition was the children's ministry in our church had a need. And our pastor, it was going through kind of one of those phases where multiple leaders had kind of moved in and out over the past few years, and they needed some stability down there. And so he said, I know you're not necessarily a kids guy when it comes to knowing curriculums or building a kids program, but what I need you to do is just be a leader and just build stability with your workers. We had a lot of rapport built with a lot of the parents of those kids by how we served in the main areas of the church.
How big was that church there?
About 4,000 people at the time. Yeah. We were responsible for about 700 kids and their families would come through the doors of the church every month. Well,
How many people were on staff?
On staff, there was about 40 people that worked at that church.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just curious. I'll tell you why later. So anyway, so you came to Omaha. What happened next?
Well, we really felt like God had called us here to plant Glow Church. Glow is not an acronym.
Yeah, where did Glow come from?
Yeah, so part of that season of preparation I was just referring to, it goes back to my days as a kids leader, kids pastor. I was huge into doing glow in the dark stuff. Glow in the dark ministry with kids was a lot of fun. Black lights, setting up stuff like that. And even prior to that with our internship program that was based with young adults, we would travel the Midwest and do youth services. And we used a lot of black light effects to paint dramatic, pictures of light and dark and things like that spiritually. And I got really good at just being able to put stuff together. And I remember God just dealing with my heart about Matthew chapter 5, let your light shine, the Sermon on the Mount that Jesus taught and that whole part. And man, it just came alive in me. I believe that we're going to see God raise up a church that steps into a dark world. Every one of us does every day. We go out into a dark world and there's a lot of hopelessness and hurt and all those things.
Right.
And the Bible, shares several illustrations. I remember the story of Moses in Exodus, when he would spend time with God up on the mountain, spend time with the source of light, God being the light, but he would step down and he would glow. The Bible says his face shone like the face of the sun.
Right.
So it just really came alive in me that God wanted a church to be built here about people who were trained and effective disciples on what it meant to spend time with the source and then to step out in a dark world and let their light shine. And glowing is something that we don't preach. Glowing is a byproduct. It's an after effect of what we do in our time with the Lord. I believe there are people out there that may not necessarily believe in God or yet, but they can tell with somebody who glows that there's something specifically different about him.
I have a friend out in California, and I think the name of his church is Shine Church. And he always, at the end of all his letters, he just puts Shine and he puts his name,
Yeah.
So when we planted Kingdom Encounters, a lot of people said, oh, that's a creative, cool name, Kingdom Encounters. Well, Glow Church is even a cooler name, or a hot name. I don't know what, but anyway. So
yeah, we try not to be, we didn't want it to be that name just for the sake of that or to be something buzzy or sexy or whatever. We just really felt like the word glow also will be a very attractive name to families.
Right.
That was really big to us too.
Well, and it's catchy.
Yeah.
It's catchy. It's
Indeed.
it's not Life whatever or Trinity whatever, and it seems like the trend for a while, at least here in Omaha, was not everybody. A lot of churches are changing the name to be something new and different. And
yeah.
And I don't know, it's kind of weird because you get used to calling a church by its name, and they change their name, and you keep calling it by their old name. You go, where's that? Where's that? Oh, I don't know. That's their new name is. Okay, so.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So you planted, I remember you were in like Ralston High School or something for a while, is that right?
Yeah, so we landed in the Ralston community. That's where we ended up. When we got here, we didn't know where in Omaha Metro we would end up, but we established ourselves in Ralston. We felt drawn to Ralston because there's so many opportunities to minister to people there. We really connected with their school district leadership. Just as you know, you come here and you don't know many people, you got to just meet people and build. And we had a great connection with Dr. Adler, the superintendent there at Ralston, and they allowed us to start in an elementary school. So we started in January of 19 and Meadows Elementary off Berry Street, right there, 96th and Q. 9 months later, we moved to Ralston High School. There was an opening there, and we were starting to build momentum. This was in the fall of 18, and then fall of 19, and then going into 2020. We had just celebrated our 1 year as a church, just been in the high school for 4 months, and then that's when the world changed.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, the world changed for sure. So you're at a new location now, right?
We are. Yeah.
Is it technically still Ralston?
It is Ralston. Yeah,
Okay.
It's in downtown Ralston. Through that whole process of just staying faithful with the pandemic, we had to close down school ordinances and everything through that whole process, and we were online for about 6 months. And when we came back, we realized very quickly we were going to have to start over. We just weren't far enough along, in the natural sense. We had a core group of about 18, 19 people that were still with us. And God has been so good to Glow since that restarting point, which would have been fall of 2020. In June of last year, we're just kind of trucking along, resuscitation mode, believing behind the scenes that God's doing things. This group of investors, it's called the Omaha Hinge Project. But what it is a reestablishment of the old granary in downtown Ralston. And it's a $17 million project over several years. And they just finished phase one of it, which was to take that 100-plus-year-old granary and restore it into like event centers, an outdoor green, which is incredible, this huge LED screen. They've been doing like Huskers tailgates there every Saturday. It's just gorgeous how they've taken the history of that place, kept it intact, yet still it has a very modern feel to it. And so we connected through them, through some other church planners in our city. We sat down with these guys, shared our vision with them. I'm thinking to myself, there's no way, timing-wise, money-wise, that our church is ready for something like this. But God continued to confirm it. First of all, through our board, I said, I know, guys, this seems crazy. It's going to triple our rent. It's going to do all these things. But I just need to bring it up just so I can get it off my chest. And every last one of them said, no, you need to do it. And then we sat down with these guys, and I'm like, well, I don't know if they're going to think we're financially viable and all these things. And they said, no, we think you're the right fit. And we began to see God do miracle after miracle to position our church with people, resources, finances, and everything to be able to effectively move into that space. So we launched this April there, and we just finished moving into the offices, which are right next door to the center that we get to move in, that we get to have church in. It's a semi-permanent thing. We use one of the rooms.
Are you having church there yet or not?
I'm sorry?
Are you having church there yet?
We are, we are. So every Sunday morning, 10 o'clock, downtown Ralston at the Granary, we have church, full live worship. We have kids ministry going on, live band, life-giving message, really raising a culture of people who come from all walks of life.
Right.
I love what God's doing right now.
Well, we'll make sure, you can say do you have a website? You can say what it is, but we'll print it on the bottom of the screen here.
Yeah,
in this section.
absolutely.
Go ahead and tell
Yeah,
me.
it's glowchurch.life. So www.glowchurch.life, L-I-F-E.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And what time are your services on Sundays?
We start at 10 o'clock. Yep.
What does a service look like at Glow Church? Somebody's looking for a new church. I mean, there's lots of churches in town. Somebody's looking at a new church. They want to check Glow out.
That's
Tell them a little
question.
bit about Glow.
For sure. So we're non-denominational, life-giving, family-friendly. That's our big thing. Our mission is to help people to encounter God and to grow in a life-giving family. But really how we really feel God has called us to be as a church is a big portion of the people who come to our church are people who come away from God. non-churched or haven't been in a church in a really long period of time.
Right.
So we do have all walks of life come in the door. You know, we are a very high level of encouragement, easy environment, not, you know, it's a shame-free, judgment-free zone. We want you to come as you are. There's no dress code or anything crazy. What I'm wearing
dress
now
code?
is, you know.
Oh man, I'm not coming. Okay, no, too.
So what I'm wearing today is something I might preach in, you know. There's about 15, 20 minutes of live engaging worship. You know, we have a great time of prayer and just giving announcements, and then we'll teach the word for about 30 minutes, give people an opportunity to connect with God, and then on the back end, we very much encourage time for people to converse, have conversations, drink coffee, eat donuts, have a great time.
I visited one Sunday. You had a lot of donuts. I mean, you had a lot of donuts there. So it's like you had more donuts than people that day.
Well, if I remember right, I think that day you visited, if I'm not mistaken, the power, it was that huge storm came through Omaha and it knocked all the power out or something. I don't remember if that was the whole story
I don't
or
remember
not.
either, but yeah. But I do remember a lot of donuts. I think, man, they're hungry for donuts around here. So.
Yeah. So just that's really kind of how we are, you know. We love the presence of God, and we love just being able to encourage people. And you know, the stories of life transformation have been really coming out more now than we've seen yet. Just people who have
And
really
you have
found
family.
God.
How many kids do you have?
I got 2 kids. So my wife and I have been married for 21 years. I've got a son and a daughter. My son is about to turn 18. He's a senior, and my daughter is 14. She's a freshman.
So how was the transition, especially if you're a son moving, you know, kind of going into high school, I'm guessing, or from middle school or something?
Yeah, he was in 7th grade when we got here, and she was in the 4th grade. Honestly, it was difficult, you know, to sit down and say, hey guys, we feel like God is calling us to go start a church. And they were very established in their schools and are the church scene and all their friends and social life. And, you know, the first year we lived here, here's something that's came out of it that I'm so grateful for as a dad, is that my son and daughter are very tight with each other. Their relationship is very, very strong. They're very close friends because that's who they had. They only had each other for that first 6 months to a year that we got here. But God's been good to them. He's shown them miracles through this. He's given them great friends. My son is, you know, he works, he's got a job, he does dual credit with Metro Community College at Gretna High School. He works with photography in the yearbook. My daughter's on the show choir there. They have really found their niche here. Sometimes I think they've found it better than even Christy and I, it feels like from time to time.
Right. So what would you tell people who are listening? You're in another city, you get a vision that's confirmed multiple ways. You still have to act on it. You still have to make decisions. You have to leave everything that's comfortable, and not just your church, but you've been there a while, your doctors, your friends, your car repairman, your real, you know, whomever. You've got a relationship with all these people, and lots of people do it all the time. We did it when we came here. But still, share something to be helpful to people right now that are listening that say, I have a vision to do whatever that is. And it might not be plant a church. It might be just to write a book or paint a painting or start a new job or who knows, you know.
Yeah.
What advice can you give them as they're working through the process of making a decision and proceeding?
Yeah, sometimes I look back on 4 years ago and I think, man, I was crazy, naive, kind of a combination of both probably, but I was full of faith. I knew that God had confirmed this. And when you get a word from God, and you know you have people in your corner who believe in you and believe in this process, those are things you got to hold on to. I was reading in the Bible this morning in Hebrews about holding fast to your confession so that you're able to boldly come to the throne of grace. Right. And that's that verse. I'm actually teaching part of that verse in my message this Sunday at Glow. But I really feel that was the thing, is if you're thinking about it, I think what got me to that point was one day waking up and realizing that if I didn't take the steps to begin to do this, I'm going to miss out on a really big part of the purpose God's created me to have.
Right.
I don't want to stand before him one day and say I didn't do it because I was full of fear, or I had a lot of excuses, or I thought I had a lot of time. You know, there is preparation. And sometimes we make that decision to do that big thing, then we go through a season of preparation.
Well, I remember you referenced John Bevere's book, Driven by Eternity.
Yeah.
And you know, he talks in there about, somewhere in there he talks about avoiding getting to heaven someday and standing before God and having him say something like, I called you to be a pastor, and the guy says, yeah, but I went out, I was a great businessman, and I funded the kingdom, and God said, that was great, but that's what I called you to do. Or being reversed,
Reversed.
You know, and where, I called you to be a businessman, but you decided to be a pastor, And that whole process of discerning, just discerning that whole, next steps. I mean, I planted a church, as you know, and then my wife died, and through a step-step process, I decided to step away from that, let my son pastor a church, and visited a church and walked in just trying to find a church home and was offered a job, and then met a girlfriend and who became a fiance, and now we're getting married. And if I had not stepped away, none of these other things would have happened.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so you make decisions and you believe that you're being led by God, but you don't know the next steps. Mm-hmm. And that's where the faith comes in.
That's like Abraham talked about, in the Bible talked about Abraham going and not knowing. God doesn't just give us every single answer or everything. Like I said, when we got here, we didn't know where in Omaha. That was it's almost like a heat-seeking missile. You do what you know to do, and eventually God will land you on the target he's designed for you.
Right.
When we got here, we thought that Glow Church would be somewhere closer to the middle of the city, maybe like West Roads area. Right. At one point, we were even talking with the management of that mall to have Glow Church there, and through a set of circumstances, it didn't work out.
That was with Jim Sadler, right?
With Jim Sadler,
He's a good
incredible
friend.
One of our closest friends here.
Right.
And then, that fell through, and I was discouraged, and we were supposed to start the church in 5 months, and I took a drive, and lo and behold, I stumbled upon Ralston, and the doors began to open one by one in that community, and that was the confirmation. But I didn't know that going in. Right. It takes faith. It takes knowing and having a word to stand on and speak.
Well, when we moved here, I'd been to Omaha a dozen times, but when we moved here, God specifically said, "Buy in Bellevue," which was weird because I'd never been to Bellevue. And all my times coming to Omaha, I'd never been to Bellevue, and I was like, "Well, why am I buying in Bellevue?" First of all, it's a different city. Second of all, it's a different county. I mean, it's connected. It's a bedroom community next door, but we found out after the first year when we came here to help Cross Lutheran School that closed, and then my wife got a job at Bellevue Christian Academy in Bellevue, obviously Bellevue Christian Academy, and she worked there for the next 11 years, and it was clear then why we were living in Bellevue. I mean, we were literally 5 minutes from our house to her job,
Wow.
And so, but you don't know these things when you get a word from God. He's just telling you something. He wants you to be faithful to what he's telling you to do, even though you don't have all the answers.
Yeah, and that can be hard sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Being full of faith and walking through a difficult season, sometimes I think people think, well, if you're full of faith, everything good will happen. Well, faith is actually only utilized when doubt tries to set in, when things don't go the way we planned. I read that recently. Faith comes in when things don't go the way we planned.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. that'll pop a light bulb or two.
Yeah. And it also, faith comes in before you plan things.
Yes.
I teach, on prayer a lot, as you know, and I go to churches and I challenge leaders to pray before they plan out something, before they strategize something. And a lot of leaders have come to me and say, it never crossed our minds to pray first. Yeah. We always pray at the end for God to bless what we've put together. But instead, I'm challenging them, hey, pray in advance and let him tell you what to put together. Yep. And it's just a different mindset. It's a different way of looking at things.
Yeah, to that point, tomorrow, which will be the 24th here, Saturday, we got a huge outreach we're doing at Ralston High School. We're giving away 200 brand new pairs of shoes to kids that are in need in our district. We have a bunch of volunteers. We're gonna do something real big at the high school. The reason I bring this up is this is our second year doing it. And we've seen God do a lot of things from year one to now to build some momentum. But I was reading a devotional from Oswald Chambers. Incredible, my utmost for his highest. That's a great one. But there's one particular devotional that says that prayer isn't the preparation to the work or necessarily even the follow-up to the work. Prayer actually is the work. Right. And everything else is just a byproduct of that. And I told my wife, I said, what we have to do this year that we didn't do last year is we need to get some hands and prayers on these shoes when they arrive before we send them out to these kids. So last night at Glow, we did a prayer and worship night. We had several people lay hands and pray over all of these pairs of shoes, just like they would do in the book of Acts with those shawls and, and handkerchiefs and whatever. And I just feel so full of faith, Jay, that when those kids put those shoes on, they've been prayed over. The presence of God's gonna walk with them right into their homes, right into their schools. there's power in that prayer mode.
Right. You know, Martin Luther said, one of my favorite quotes from him, and I don't know a lot, but he said, I have so much to do today, I have to spend the first 3 hours in prayer. You know, and it's like,
It's so good.
it's so good. Hey, we got to wrap this up.
Yeah.
Appreciate you being here. Matt Prose, Glow Church. We'll put the information on the bottom of the screen. If you're looking for a good church home in the Ralston, La Vista, Papillion, Southwest, Omaha, somewhere east side of Nebraska, middle of the country, check out Glow Church. I've known Matt. I met him right after he got here, had him as a guest at my church. Good guy. You'll enjoy him, his wife, his kids, their church. Great place to minister. So thanks a lot for coming out. God bless you.
Having me.
Thanks for tuning in to the Caring Community. We'll see you next time. God bless you. Bye-bye.